kind of vision, then maybe that suits you best. But again, it's not just about growing, it's about best practice as well. So when you have documents in place, and people will have confidence in you, because you know exactly what you have got, and within the standards that you have, within the policy that you built, you say. So what you, for the small businesses, then if opportunity do arises, if it do come, you don't have to do hard work, you don't have to run around for it, because it's already there. All you got to do is put the application together, submit it with the rest, and I tell you, most people value your governance. You've got the standard, they know exactly what you're talking about, and then also build your image, you say. So if you've got a good positive image, like we've done, and people will go for that. Is the quality and is the image, and the three thing is put your time and effort into it.
People, you need to take on board what Mr. Basit Shah is saying, because they've been working with the NHS for the last 17 years. So we do have somebody that knows all about policies and procedures, because the NHS is a very bureaucratic organisation. So that is a major, major achievement. Now moving on to actually the second part of the programme, and the first part went on just a little bit longer than anticipated. And Basit Shah is a man of many talents. And he's also the MD for his own organisation called Vision Associates. And that is a social enterprise. And we were talking about social enterprises only 2 weeks ago. So, and that is all to do with equality and diversity. And we're moving on to the Equality Acts and stuff. And what I want to tell you people is the Equality Act, I mean, some of us, I mean, Mr. Basit Shah, with organisations, they feel that the Equality Act 2010 and all the other equality policies that have been coming along from the government, they are mainly for the non-Asian community to embrace the rest of us. So does any Asian business really need to bother with any equality, diversity, or even any policy? I mean, is it really something that even concerns them?
Well, you can look at it two ways. A, there's the legislation, but there's best practice. So two things goes hand in hand. Now, if whether it relates or not, two things here that we all need to understand. If, for example, you don't have it, then you could put yourself at a stage in which you can be criticized, and also discriminatory factors could take place within your company or your business and your organization without you even realizing it. So those are the major things that you got to understand. Equality legislation, at least what businesses need to do is to understand what it is. And the Equality Legislation Act made it kind of simpler. There are pros and cons there. Made it simpler, put everything under one kind of a banner, under one part.
But does this policy apply to Asian businesses? Do they
it applies to everybody. It applies to, it doesn't have to, because you're Asian business that you don't, it's not apply. It applies to everything, because it's a legislation that means if you are going to employ people, then you must have equality policies and procedures in place to ensure that you are doing what the legislation says, and to ensure, to protect you discriminating other people, and that's not because that you've been doing intentionally, it could be unintentionally.
But the point is that as Asians, we tend to employ family, we tend to employ friends of friends, friend recommended, their friend. So where does the employment policy or the Equality Act fit in when the employment policy that some of our Asian businesses have is directed just at family and friends? Well,
my advice to people would be, I think if I put the Equality Act at one side for a minute, right? You see, if you look at most of like small business, I'm talking about takeaways, I'm talking about restaurants and other shops, you see, grocery shops. People do tend to kind of have that kind of culture where they appoint someone or recruit someone without even advertising. So they're missing on one crucial point. If they advertised, for example, a post to say that you need someone in your business, and you put some kind of a role responsibility and a criteria is to this person must have A, B, C, D. Within that, you may find a diverse workforce, someone who may not be similar background to you, but can bring quite a lot of assets into your business, you say. That's where we are missing. Now, if that's the case, then that's mean, A, you've actually went through that's a good practice. B, if you are going to recruit through advertising, then you need to make sure if you advertise, then you've got two different types of people applying for that job. One would be someone, for example, that's been recommended by friends, families, or whatever, and another person comes through your advertisement.
So you actually have a two-tier approach. Is that what we're saying?
Well, see, the thing is, right, there's one culture within what I said, within the Asian culture, about the corner shops and the takeaways, and they kind of recruit people who
that they know
recommended, that they know of. It's not because they don't want to recruit anyone else. It's just because how things are working in these communities. But what I am saying is that what they're missing a point, they're missing a huge opportunities. If they advertise it, if they advertise and they find someone who could not only meet their needs, but even take the business forward, you say, could bring other opportunities, other talents and skills into the business. Secondly, if, for example, they do advertise the post, and despite of a person's applied for the job, they meet all the goals and targets that you asking for, and they haven't appointed that, but appointed someone who is recommended, then they open themselves for discrimination. Now they can, if the person do take them to court, to tribunal, and they don't have a policy, they don't have a procedure, and they don't have equality in place, then they could not only, that would be very costly, that will cost them, but also the image of the company could actually go down as well.
But isn't it really hard to prove discrimination? I mean, how could anybody prove that they were the best person for the job and you simply didn't give them the job because you wanted to employ a friend? How would you even begin to prove something like that?
Well, I mean, the receiver of who discriminated, for example, who may feel that they've been discriminated, before they go, they obviously will look at everything to say, right, okay, I have got the language. For example, let me put it this way. The person that you appoint who couldn't speak the language, say that's just hypothetically, right? Couldn't speak it, but the job is about serving people, right? In your job advert, right, you probably placed to say that we need someone who could speak multilingual. And the person that applied for a job, not related, but can speak English, Urdu, Bengali, whatever, right? And you only appoint someone who actually only speaks Urdu or maybe broken English. Obviously, that's an evidence in itself.
Okay.
That's just one example. There are a number of different examples. For example, it's not just about for a gender issue. And you only appoint someone because he's a male, and a gender issue, and gender is because that the person who applied for a job, female, can do better job and can prove that could be penalized.
Now that's a really good point that you raised, because the majority of Asian takeaways, I'm not saying all of them, but the vast majority have male waiters.
Yeah.
So is that discrimination?
Well, I wouldn't say it's discrimination in a sense, but it depends how you promote the business. Now, if, for example, that the woman, female, there are two ways of looking at that. Is it because discrimination, or is it because that the woman group haven't actually even realized or taken that into consideration working in a takeaway, you say. So whoever works in a takeaway are people who, if you look at mainly, who will work for a low wage, you say, and even probably lower than low. And then if it's discriminatory factor because the female hasn't applied for it, and they can't take you to tribunal because if you haven't applied for a job. But if it's proven that it is because that it hasn't been, that has been discriminatory factors here, then yes, the receiver could take you to tribunal. But again, it can only be done because we don't know whether female or women, for example, not applying for it because maybe they're not interested in working in the takeaway. Now, but on the other side, have we actually done something to encourage women that, you know, the same opportunity will be for them as well here, as well as men?
Yeah. Now, the thing is, people, the reason why we're talking about the Equality Act 2010 in this business program is how the Equality Act 2010 impacts on businesses, especially Asian businesses, because we need to be on top of this, because what I'm trying to do is help you grow, is help you sustain growth, is help get you through survival, and hopefully build your company or your organization to bigger and better things. Now, the Equality Act 2010 directly impacts on your business, and if found breaching, in the sad eventuality that you have been found breaching the law, which is what it is, because it's a policy that you have to comply with, and if it goes to tribunal and you actually lose your case, and it's quite easy to lose these kind of cases, your insurance may not cover you for negligence. So you need to read the small print. So what I want to ask you is once you get to tribunal, it's found that you're guilty, you've not applied the proper procedures because in your haste to grow and expand, you just simply lost track of it, or simply you just didn't know about the Equality Act 2010 and the kind of questions that even in a job interview that you're having with a prospective employee, you cannot actually, under the Equality Act, ask them too many searching questions about their disability, about any long-term illnesses, about how many times they've visited the doctor, or even if they have a long-term illness. You are very confined to those kind of questions you can ask in terms of health. Now, that is the law. That is how things stand, and we all have to comply with that. But you know, thinking with my business hat, why would anybody want to employ the long-term sick? Because we have around 10 million disabled people in the UK. And so if you were only a small company, you were only, like we were saying, you know, have like 10, 12 employees, if 3 or 4 of them, because you didn't know, because of this law, you didn't ask those probing questions, because you weren't allowed to, 2 or 3 of them are actually long-term sick people, that's a liability on the business. So it doesn't even make commercial sense. So why has this ownership come onto businesses? Why do we have this liability thrown on businesses to support the long-term sick? Isn't that the government's job?
Well, there are 2 different ways of looking at that. You see, what the government basically is saying, we're not kind of enforcing you to have a disabled person or a long-term person. What they're trying to do is to say, if you are recruiting people, you need to make sure, A, that you have got to abide by the legislation, which is, if, for example, somebody comes into your applying in for a job in your business, and if you're not giving the job because they meet the criteria, they meet the standard and everything, and you're not giving the job because, and although the job that is basically advertised, it doesn't matter whether that person is ill, long-term illness or disability, but they can do that job, you say, and you're not giving it to them because they are disabled but can do the job, then yes, that is discriminatory. That's where the law comes in, you see. That person can take you in. Yes, if there are, for example, when you do advertising a job, you could say the job is, for example, on a counter, or whatever that may be, whatever job that you're trying to advertise, you need to make sure that you do not discriminate against the characteristic of those individuals, you say. You're only not appointing them because they're not meeting your requirement.
Okay, we're really running out of time at the moment for this Equality Act 2010, but I promise you people, we will be bringing this show back on to talk about this act in a lot of detail, because it does affect you. Because if found guilty at a tribunal, if in the haste of trying to grow and expand your business, and you happen to ask the question of, you know, whether you're long-term sick, that will put you at risk. That question straight away, you'll be in front of a tribunal immediately, without any doubt. So in terms of the last message, Mr. Basit, what would you say to people under the Equality Act? What should they do? The
best example I can give you, and the best way moving forward, is to no matter what you do in your business, whatever you do, carry out your equality impact assessment. When you carry out your equality impact assessment before even starting your business, right? Because you got to understand this is what you've got to do, who it will impact, you say. If it's impacting on women, then you've got to look at ways how to minimize those impacts, you see. You've got to mitigate those, make sure that whatever you do, carry out your equality impact assessment. There are loads of frameworks available, opportunities available, and it doesn't take you a long time to do it. You need a few hours, take advice from somebody, but carry that out before you even start, before you even work, and that will basically help you to understand exactly why the equality legislation is in place.
But there is a bit of good news, people. In terms of the 10 million disabled people in the UK, they actually have a spending power of £80 billion as covered by the DDA. So in terms of opportunities and promoting and growth, it might just be in your best interest to look at this sector of the community and to think about where you can also maximize and support and have a moral obligation to support those that are disadvantaged. So never mind the law, we actually do have a moral obligation to other people in society. So that time went really, really quick. So we will be bringing the Equality Act 2010 back on again, simply because I'm here to protect your interests. I'm here to let you know what may impact on you and how to protect you. So Equality Act 2010, if you've got any questions, you can catch us both on Vision Associates and myself on my Facebook as well and through DM. So thank you very much, and we shall see you next week.